Right. Tonight's lesson is the form of angels.
I'm clicking for you, Gordon. So
Oh, okay. Thanks, John. The form of angels. So what do angels look like? And how do they appear to people? And so we're going to investigate that tonight using what all Christians should be able to use is their Bibles, because anything outside of the Bible would be meaningless, really. And so we will go ahead. Hebrews talks about having entertained, be careful about entertaining strangers, because you may have been entertaining angels without realizing it. I think there's a click there, John. Angels can assume any form. We may not recognize them when they do appear. Hebrews 13:2. Don't forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some have unwittingly entertained angels. Next. This is an ancient painting of in the 1st or 2nd century AD of inside a tomb, and it shows the face of perhaps Michael or Gabriel as the archangel with a human face. Angels basically are invisible until, God makes them visible. Colossians 1:16, for by him all things were created, we're talking about Christ, that are in heaven and that are on earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers or things, all things were created through him and for him. In Numbers 22 to 35, the story of Balaam and his donkey. Balaam did not see the angel of the Lord, but the animal did, even though his donkey. So the Lord had to enable Balaam to see what the donkey had seen. That was the angel, the messenger. Okay? Now here's something we all know about. God's angels appeared in the form of horses pulling chariots of fire.
Oh my goodness.
2 Kings 6:14 through 17. Therefore he, God, sent horses and chariots, or not he, God, this is the Syrians, chariots and a great army to surround Elisha and his servant. And they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant, we think this might be Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, arose early, and he went out, and there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots, really a big show of force. And his servant said to him, to Elisha, Alas, my master, what shall we do? And so he answered, Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them, meaning the Syrian king and his army. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. Open the eyes of his servant. And then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. It's true that angels can change their form. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the presentation, because Satan can change his form. And so the young man looked up a second time, and this time, this is what he saw. The mountain was full of God's horses and God's chariots of fire all around. I think there's a little piece at the bottom here, John. Elisha's servant couldn't see the angels, i.e. the horses, pulling God's chariots of fire until God had opened his eyes. Does anyone, can anyone think of a similar situation with Christ after his resurrection?
You're muted, Werner.
It would have been on the road to Emmaus, and it also, a similar thing happened at the tomb site, where two men in brilliant white clothing appeared to the women, and on the two men walking on the road to Emmaus, the Lord was walking with them, but somehow they didn't recognize him. This could be a mechanism that God had used similar to Elisha's servant until God had allowed the servant to see what Elisha could see. It was the same for the two men on the road to Emmaus, that when Jesus started to do something, something happened with their vision that they immediately then, after he broke bread with them, they saw the Lord. Go ahead to the next one, John. This is just a graphic to illustrate chariots of fire, although it's just a graphic of blazing fire. But what the servant saw was a powerful demonstration of God being present with Elisha and the servant, and for them not to be afraid, because those that were with them were greater than those who were with the opposing force. Sort of like saying, he who is in you is greater than he who is in this world, meaning Satan. Lord, he prayed, open his eyes that he may see. Sometimes we need to see things with the eyes of faith. We walk by faith rather than by sight. At least for the servant, it was to literally open his physical eyes and to see what was actually up in the heavens and in the sky and in the clouds. God makes his angels spirits and his ministers a flame of fire. Hebrews 1:7. And of the angels, he says, who makes his angels spirits and his ministers, that's another descriptor of an angel, his ministers a flame of fire. Exodus 3:2. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. So he, Moses, looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. What he actually was seeing was a manifestation of the angel of the Lord, which is also known as a theophany. It simply means a manifestation of the image or the presence of God. When God occupies a bush, a building, a person, it becomes very much different. The bush was not destroyed, but it was a powerful demonstration to indicate to Moses that God, by his angel, by his presence, was right there, because Moses was told to remove his shoes because the ground that he was standing on was holy ground. Angels in the scriptures are also described as like stars. And Job chapter 38, 4 through 7, where were you when I, God, laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me. If you have understanding, who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? And this is important in verse 7. When the morning stars sang together, morning stars mean the chorus of angels, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. The morning stars in Job 38:7 must have been angels. They could not have been physical stars, because those stars were not created until the fourth day. Genesis 1:16 and Genesis 1:19. The earth was created on the third day. Genesis 1:9 through verses 13. And then in Judges chapter 5, verse 20, perhaps Deborah and Barak were singing about warrior angels. They referred to stars in Judges 5:20 as they praised God for his supernatural assistance in the victories over the armies of Sisera and the other Canaanite kings. Here's the quote, Judges 5:20. They fought from the heavens, that's the angels. The stars from their courses fought against Sisera. So there was something else going on in the heavens while Deborah and Barak were witnessing what was going on with the fight against Sisera and the other Canaanite kings. It's basically allowing us to understand that sometimes what we don't see with our physical eyes, we are told to believe with our eyes of faith that God is involved in our lives as he was involved in the conquest of Canaan.
Yeah.
Angels associated with the resurrection of Jesus were described with wearing bright, white, shining garments, and their presence was like the lightning bolt, the whiteness of the lightning bolt. Go ahead and bring up the next scripture there, John. Matthew 28, 2 through 3. Behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door. Remember, the women who were going to embalm the body said, well, who will roll away the stone? When they got there, it was already rolled open. And so they came and they rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it, the two men, or the angel in this particular case, describing his countenance. His face was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. I don't know of any detergent on earth that could get clothes that clean. Do you? Luke 24, verse 4, and it happened, as they were greatly perplexed about this, that behold, two men stood by them in shining garments. You know, it seems like, when Moses asked to see God, all he really saw was this brilliant light, like no other kind of light, and that seems to be shared with the same light of the angels who have appeared to men at various times in the Bible. So that was Luke 24:4. A light shone in the prison when the angel of the Lord appeared to Peter, Acts 12, verse 7. Now behold, an angel of the Lord, not the angel of the Lord, but an angel of the Lord, stood by him, and a light shone in the prison, and he struck Peter on the side and raised him up, saying, Arise quickly, and his chains fell off his hands. Now here's that reference about angels changing their form, like being like shapeshifters, or God allowing his angels to appear as horses pulling chariots of fire. Satan tries to mimic the angels in their shining brilliance. Here's the quote, 2 Corinthians 11:14, and no wonder, for Satan himself, because he is a very high-ranking fallen angel, Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. By the way, in one of the lessons, we'll be talking about the powers that angels have. John describes Jesus in the book of Revelation holding 7 stars, representing the angels, the messengers of the 7 churches of Asia. Revelation 1, verse 16 and verse 20. He had in his right hand, this is Jesus, 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was like the sun shining in its strength. The mystery of the 7 stars which you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands which you saw are the 7 churches. Again, the emphasis being on what his face looked like. It was full strength sun. I think that's the same scripture. There you go. Here's more angels described as stars, Luke 10:18. And he, Jesus, said to them, this is when they went out 2 by 2 and they came back talking about how the demons had obeyed them and all different things had happened. And Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, describing, I think, in this particular verse, the idea of Satan's power being reduced. And this is a fine example of that when they went out to do the Lord's bidding, Satan's control of things down here on earth was greatly diminished. Revelation 8 and 10 describes this. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. This could be a direct reference to Satan or one of his other angels that took his side in the great battle described in Revelation chapter 12, I believe. Revelation 9:1 says, the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. Bottomless pit being the place where Satan and his angels will be kept. I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. I chose this graphic just to illustrate what it might have been, what it looked like in our minds.
Gordon, a quick reminder for the group, we can hear what's going on the other side of your phone. So if you can help keep that in mind, that would be very helpful. Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead and click. Angels continue being described as stars. For instance, a mighty angel not falling down from heaven, but coming down from heaven, was described as having a face as bright as the sun. Here's the scripture. Revelation 10:1. I saw, this is John still describing what he sees in the vision given to him. I saw still another mighty angel coming down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was on his head. His face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire. Two thoughts. One, I thought this was a perfect description of Jesus. You get an early description of Jesus in the first chapter of the book of Revelation. Eyes of burning red hot with fire, hair white as snow, feet like burnished bronze, or this could be the mighty angel, such as a mighty angel as Michael. But I would lean towards the Lord, because he is the mightiest of all. He is higher and more superior than any of the other angels. Now here's a section where it talks about angels most often appeared as men, as human in form. Note, there is no Bible example of angels appearing in a female form, although this is a popular idea, but it doesn't come with any scriptural basis. Angels often appear dressed in white or in bright clothing. Many times angels were not immediately recognized as being angels. Angels often appeared in dreams or in visions. Again, still staying with this theme of angels often appearing as men, Genesis 18:1-2 Then the Lord appeared to him, that is Abraham, by the terebinth trees of Mamre, as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw him, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the ground. A similar greeting, but perhaps he had already suspected that these were not just ordinary men. One of the 3 men was the Lord himself. This particular manifestation, this is the time when the 3 men appeared prior to the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. This particular manifestation of the Lord himself is known as either a theophany or a Christophany. A theophany meaning a manifestation of God in a form, or a manifestation of Christ in a form. And by the way, this is where we get, this particular chapter is where the Jewish people get the idea of, or the paying God a tithe, a tenth of what we have in possessions and in harvest to God. Genesis 32:24, verse 28 and 24. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God." In other words, you have been wrestling with God and with men and have prevailed. And of course, out of that, Jacob, or Israel, had a permanent limp with the stranger that he had wrestled until the breaking of day. And what we believe is this was the angel of the Lord himself, appearing as a man, and had all the feel of wrestling with a real physical man. And God allowed Jacob to prevail. By the way, we also have the vision that Jacob had of Jacob's ladder, of angels ascending and descending. But here in Hosea 12, there's a reference back to Jacob, verses 2 through 4. The Lord also brings a charge against Judah and will punish Jacob according to his ways. According to his deeds, he will recompense him, reward him. He took his brother by the heel in the womb, and in his strength he struggled with God and prevailed. Yes, he struggled with the angel and prevailed. He wept and sought favor from him. He found him in Bethel, and there he spoke to us. So it was definitely God, but in the form of the angel of the Lord himself. If you remember Cornelius, I'll get to that in a minute. We had a little snafu there. In Judges 13, 9 through 11, God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came to the woman again as she was sitting in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. Then the woman ran in haste and told her husband and said to him, "Look, the man who came to me the other day has just now appeared to me," in other words, out of nowhere. So Manoah arose and followed his wife, and when he came to the man, he said to him, "Are you the man who spoke to this woman?" God appeared to Manoah and his wife. Now Cornelius, in his vision or his experience in chapter 10 of Acts 3 through 7 and verse 30, Cornelius described the angel who appeared to him in a vision as a man dressed in very bright clothing. You wonder, is this because the angels themselves have been in the very presence of God for eternity and have thus taken on the glory and the brightness from God's presence into themselves? If you will recall, Moses, when he came down the mountain, his face was bright, so bright that he had to cover it with a veil until it finally faded away. Just something to think about. Mark 16:5, on entering the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a long white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. You know, I talked to Bill this morning about why appear in the image of another human. Was it perhaps because it would be less alarming to appear in a similar image as other men, but yet with a marked difference? At least the bright clothing got their attention. In Acts 1:9 through 11, it says, "Now when he, Jesus, had spoken these things, while they watched, he was taken up." This is his ascension. "And a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven, as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, who also said, 'Men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will so come in like manner as you saw him go into heaven.'" And I think if you would check that out in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, Jesus will come back again with his powerful angels. Can angels fly, and do they have wings? Daniel 9:21. "Yes, while I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel," the angel Gabriel, who is associated with announcements, "whom I had seen in the vision at the very beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, reached me about the time of the evening offering." So, winged or wingless, this man Gabriel could move around, float, fly. I guess when we hear things like angels can fly, we often want to give them the same kind of wings, or at least something that would explain why they can fly. Revelation 14:6. "Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven," either aided by wings or not, but it doesn't say he had wings, "having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people." Some assume that angels have wings because cherubim and seraphim are described as having wings. Now, I chose this graphic. What is different about these angels? They've all got horns blowing like Gabriel, but what's missing from what we assume angels to be like? We've already been told that angels appear in a human form and they can do unbelievable things. And God can make their images appear to us and also remain invisible. But what you don't see here is wings. There are no wings in this graphic. If you go as far back as the 1st and 2nd century and 3rd and 4th century descriptions of angels as icons, like Michael and Gabriel, they all are painted with wings. But I thought this was a particular nice graphic showing Christ in the center, getting ready to come in his second coming. We have one more slide, and that's the end. Next week's lesson will be the attributes of angels. I hope you will tune in for that.